Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into the world of dark fantasy anime, specifically Beyond the Boundary, or Kyoukai no Kanata. If you're into shows where the supernatural is, well, part of everyday life, often dangerously so, you know there's usually more going on beneath the surface. So Beyond the Boundary gives us this world with these creatures, Yōmu, coexisting with people. Most folks can't see them, though. And that brings us to our main question for this deep dive. Are Yōmu just, cool anime monsters? Or is there something older, something deeper influencing how they were created?
That's exactly it. I mean, they're far from generic. I really see the Yōmu as this sophisticated narrative device. Our core idea today is that they're a modern mix, really, drawing heavily from Japanese folklore, specifically Onryō, vengeful spirits, and Ikiryō, which are fascinatingly living ghosts. And the show takes these old ideas and reframes them, puts them in a modern psychological context.
That sounds fascinating. So our mission today is to kind of pull back the curtain on how Yōmu work in the anime, trace that lineage back to traditional beliefs, and then really dig into how this connection lets the show explore some pretty deep themes. We're talking things like alienation, trauma, self-acceptance, and that whole fuzzy line between being human and being, monstrous. Okay, so let's start with the basics. In the show's world, what are Yōmu? Where do they actually come from?
Right. So at their core, they're presented as physical manifestations of negative human emotions. We're talking hatred, jealousy, malice, fear, that sort of thing. Their existence is basically tied to humanity's capacity for, animosity. They're kind of a side effect of us existing. And crucially, like you said, ordinary people can't see them. Only those with a supernatural knack can, which creates this sort of hidden layer to reality.
Interesting. And the name, Yōmu, it's actually a made-up word, right? Not traditional folklore. Why do you think they didn't just use Kyoukai? Everyone knows Kyoukai.
That's a great point, and I think it's deliberate. Using Kyoukai comes with a lot of, let's say, semantic baggage, preconceived ideas. The first character, means bewitching or calamity, so it definitely links them to the supernatural, same as in Kyoukai. But the second one, Mu, meaning dream. That's the key differentiator. It ties them straight to the internal world, dreams, nightmares, the subconscious. So they're not just monsters out there. They're explicitly framed as coming from within the human psyche, like a dream shades, maybe. Echoes of our collective nightmare.
Dream shades. I like that. And they're not all the same, are they? The show makes a point of showing variety.
Oh, absolutely not. Huge diversity. Some are totally docile, just kind of existing. Others are aggressive, dangerous. And their forms are all over the place. Blobs, weird beasts, animals, even humanoids like Ayaka Shindu and Ai running the appraisal shop. They look human, but they're Yōmu.
And then you have the really powerful ones, the ones that drive the plot.
Definitely. You've got the hollow shadow, which is this creepy non-corporeal thing that messes with your head, feeding on trauma and regret. Creates these whole illusionary worlds. And then the biggest one, the ultimate Yōmu, called Beyond the Boundary itself, which is actually inside the main character, Akihito.
Right, Akihito, the half Yōmu, Hanyu. He's got immortality, crazy regeneration, which Mirai uses for target practice, basically. But the downside is huge, this uncontrollable Yōmu form that just bursts out sometimes.
Exactly. When his human side gets weak, this monstrous form emerges. Super destructive, levels landscapes with these orange energy blasts. Makes him both a protector and, potentially a massive threat himself.
So if these dream shades born from our own negativity are everywhere, how does society actually cope? It's not just total chaos.
No, not at all. There's a whole system. It's managed by specialists called Ikahishi, spirit world warriors. These are people with unique powers like Mirai's blood manipulation, which is seen as cursed, or the Neis family's barrier techniques. Their job is basically Yōmu control and human protection.
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think, the whole economic side of it. Hunting Yōmu isn't just duty, it's like a job. Tell us about the Yōmu stones.
Right. This is such a clever piece of world building. When an Ikaishi defeats a Yōmu, it leaves behind this crystalline remnant, a Yōmu stone. These stones can be appraised, bought, and sold for actual money. It literally turns supernatural hunting into a profession, a source of income. It totally grounds the fantasy. You see Mirai constantly broke, hunting just to make rent. Wow. It creates real-world problems for these characters.
It really does, and it creates this almost utilitarian view of these creatures. Like Azumine is saying they're just like crops or farm animals.
Exactly. That quote is so telling. It's a stark departure from any kind of traditional spiritual reverence. They're a resource to be harvested. It adds this layer of supernatural capitalism almost.
Supernatural capitalism. Wow. So what does that do to the spirit world warriors themselves, ethically, I mean?
It complicates things, definitely. They're not just pure heroes, they're participants in a system. It brings up questions of exploitation, class differences, think Mirai's struggle versus the wealthy Ne's clan. It forces them into moral gray areas. Is it right to profit from beings born of human suffering? The show doesn't give easy answers.
And it's not just individuals operating alone, right? There's a structure, clans.
Precisely. It's organized.
Yeah.
You have powerful families like the Ne's clan overseeing territories, keeping tabs on people like Akihito. And there's social hierarchy, even prejudice. Mirai's clan is ostracized because their blood power is considered cursed. So it's a bureaucracy with all the baggage that implies.
Tying this together, this whole system, the bureaucracy, the economy, it really pushes it into urban fantasy territory, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It allows the story to explore themes beyond just good versus evil. We get into duty, family honor, the compromises people make within a system. The conflict becomes individual versus the system as much as human versus monster.
Let's talk visuals. Kyoto Animation is famous for its look. How does the animation style of Beyond the Boundary play into these themes, especially with the Yōmu?
Keone's work here is crucial. The animation is incredibly fluid, especially in fights. But it's the Yōmu design that really stands out for the key ones. They're often surreal, memorable, that hollow shadow creating distorted dimensions based on your psyche. It's visually striking. Or the world of the Beyond the Boundary itself, this abstract, chaotic space. And Akihito's Yōmu form, it's feral, powerful, wreathed in that destructive orange energy. It looks dangerous.
And the use of color and sound, that seems really deliberate too.
Totally. The palette shifts noticeably. You have warm, almost gentle tones for the slice of life moments, then boom, deep reds, purples, blacks when the supernatural stuff kicks in. Really sets the dark fantasy mood. The music is often described as haunting, very atmospheric, and the sound design gives everything weight. You hear Mirai's blood hardening into a sword, Akihito's roars. It makes the fantastical feel tangible.
One thing that always struck me is the contrast. You have these, well, frankly, quite cute character designs, and then this really dark, sometimes graphically violent, surreal Yōmu world. Is that just Kyoani's style, or is there more to it?
I think it's absolutely intentional. It's not a bug, it's a feature. That visual dissonance is the theme. The title, Beyond the Boundary, points right at it. There's a literal boundary shown between the normal world and the supernatural one. And that visual divide mirrors the characters' inner lives. They look like normal students, but inside, they're dealing with these monstrous, cursed realities. The cute designs make the hidden darkness even more jarring, more effective. It's a visual metaphor for that hidden world within.
Okay, let's get into the roots. Where does this idea of Yōmu, these dream shades, really come from in Japanese folklore?
Well, that core idea, creatures born from intense human emotion, has really strong parallels in traditional beliefs. The most direct link is probably to Onryō. Remember how Yōmu come from things like hatred, resentment, malice. Onryō are basically vengeful ghosts, spirits of people who died with those kinds of powerful negative feelings left unresolved. They're thought to cause harm, even disasters called tatari. So you could see Yōmu as almost the ambient tatari of society's negativity given form.
Okay, so Onryō are spirits of the dead fueled by rage. But Yōmu come from living people's emotions too, right? How does that fit? That's where Ikiryō come in, isn't it?
Exactly. This is where it gets even more interesting. Ikiryō aren't ghosts of the dead. They're manifestations of a living person's soul. If someone feels overwhelming rage or jealousy or even obsessive love, part of their spirit can supposedly split off and go haunt or harm someone, sometimes without the person even knowing it. The anime takes this concept, usually tied to one person's intense feelings, and kind of blows it up to a collective level. The general negative emotional vibe of society itself generates these Yōmu.
So this idea of emotions having physical power isn't just an anime invention. It's grounded in broader Japanese thought.
Deeply grounded. You've got Shinto animism, the indigenous belief which sees spirits, kami, in everything. That blurs the lines between the physical and spiritual right from the start. Makes the idea of emotion taking form feel, well, more plausible within that worldview. Then you add Buddhist ideas, which emphasize how earthly attachments and strong emotions tie souls to this world, creating ghosts, yurei, if they're unresolved. Yōmu are basically a physical manifestation of those binding negative human attachments, whether they originate from the living or echo from the dead.
And this fear of vengeful spirits, it wasn't just stories, right? It actually affected history.
Oh, hugely. There was a real fear, especially of powerful figures who died unjustly. Think disgraced nobles. Sugawara no Michizen is the classic example, a 9th century scholar exiled whose vengeful spirit, or gori, was blamed for disasters. This led to Gori Shinku, a whole system of beliefs and rituals focused on appeasing these powerful spirits. They'd even deify them, turn them into protective kami, just to calm them down.
Wow. So looking at the Ikaishi, the spirit world warriors in the anime, they're kind of like a modern action-packed version of those ancient priests and rituals.
That's a great way to put it. Instead of prayers and shrine building, you have barrier magic and combat. But the underlying function is similar, managing the dangerous, tangible consequences of powerful human negativity and the spirits it creates. It shows how that deep cultural belief persists, just adapted into a contemporary action fantasy framework.
Okay, to really get a handle on the anime's creativity, let's compare Yōmu directly with these traditional figures. How did the creators mix and match?
Let's break it down kind of side by side.
Yōmu, like we said, come from collective human negativity, kind of ambient. Onryō and Ikiryō. They stem from a specific person's intense, unresolved feelings. Big difference there. And Yukai origins are super diverse: nature, animals, objects, you name it.
Right, collective versus individual. What about why they do what they do? Their motivation.
Motivation, Yōmu vary a lot. Some seem almost like animals driven by instinct. Others are just there. They aren't usually tied to a specific personal grudge like an Onryō or Ikiryō, whose motivation is almost always vengeance or fulfilling that powerful emotion. Yukai motives, again, all over the map. Mischief, malice, sometimes even helpful.
And their looks?
Form. Yōmu are incredibly diverse, matching their varied origins: blobs, beasts, humanoids, even non-physical like the Hollow Shadow. Onryō and Ikiryō usually keep a human-like form, maybe marked by how they died or what they feel. Yukai forms, wildly diverse, just like their origins.
Okay, and finally, how do you deal with them? This seems like a major shift.
Resolution. Huge difference here. Yōmu are killed by Ikaishi, and they turn into those valuable Yōmu stones. It's extermination plus resource extraction. Onryō and Ikiryō, traditionally you appease them. Rituals, exorcism, finding peace for them, sometimes even deification. Yukai are often defeated, tricked, or maybe appeased with offerings, but you don't usually harvest them.
So putting it all together, Yōmu aren't just Yukai with a new name. There's something else.
Exactly. They're a synthesis. They borrow the emotional origin from Onryō and Ikiryō. They take the diverse forms often seen in Yukai, but then they layer on this completely invented system of resolution, the fighting, the clans, the Yōmu stone economy. It's familiar echoes mixed with brand new ideas.
That makes sense. So how does weaving in these folkloric roots actually make the story and the characters' journeys and beyond the boundary more powerful? How does it drive the narrative?
It gives the conflicts real weight, real resonance. Take the Hollow Shadow arc. That Yōmu feeds on guilt and trauma. When it traps Mirai, it forces her to confront killing her friend Yui, the source of her deepest pain. It's basically a dramatization of that old idea. A spirit's power is tied to unresolved emotional turmoil. Just like you need to resolve a Yurei's issues to let it rest, Mirai has to confront her past to defeat this Yōmu. The monster becomes a catalyst for, well, therapy through combat.
And the beyond the boundary, Yōmu inside Akihito. That central conflict.
That taps into it too. The calm arc, where ambient Yōmu energy fades, weakens Akihito's human control, letting the destructive beyond the boundary surface. That entity's raw, uncontrollable power feels a lot like an aramatama, the rough, violent aspect of Akami in Shinto. And the Nain's clan's whole purpose to contain Akihito directly mirrors those historical efforts to appease or seal away dangerous spirits to prevent catastrophe. The folklore gives these plot points a kind of mythic depth.
And thinking about the characters themselves, how do their personal fights, often literally against Yōmu, reflect their own inner struggles?
The Yōmu often serve as metaphors for their internal battles. Akihito's whole arc is about learning to live with his inner monster. He doesn't just want to destroy the beyond the boundary. He has to integrate it, accept it as part of himself after the trauma it represents. It's about accepting your shadow self, not just fighting it. For Mirai, her journey is about overcoming the shame and isolation tied to her cursed blood power. She learns to see her unique, feared heritage as a strength, not a weakness.
And their relationship, the bond of outsiders.
Yes. Their romance is built entirely on that shared otherness, being labeled monsters or cursed. It's a powerful counter-narrative to the idea that being different condemns you to isolation. They find strength and acceptance together because of, not despite, their perceived flaws.
So if we boil it all down, what are the big takeaways for us, the audience? What themes really hit home, even if we're not fighting dream shades?
Well, first, there's that blurred line between human and monster. Since Yōmu come from human emotions, the show basically says humanity is the source of monstrosity. The biggest threat is inside the hero. It suggests monstrosity isn't just out there, it's a potential within us all.
That's a heavy thought.
It is. Second, you get this idea of externalized psychology. The Yōmu make inner states visible and dramatic. The hollow shadow is trauma and guilt. The beyond the boundary is repressed rage or power. The supernatural world becomes a map of the collective human subconscious, played out with swords and magic.
These abstract feelings, very concrete.
Exactly. And finally, there's the theme of loneliness and connection. Characters like Izumine's believe spirit warriors are doomed to be alone because of what they are. But the core story, especially Akihito and Mirai, actively pushes back against that. It champions finding connection, finding acceptance, even when you feel like an outcast or a monster. In a world full of dangers, connection is shown as the real power.
This has been incredibly insightful. Beyond the Boundary really does manage that balancing act, using old traditions to tell a very modern, very resonant story.
Yeah, to sum it up, it keeps that fundamental link from folklore, negative emotions, create supernatural problems. But it completely changes how those problems are managed. Out go the priests, in come the warriors, the clans, that whole Yōmu stone market. It creates its own specific terms, its own economy, its own social structure, placing ancient fears squarely into a contemporary urban fantasy setting. It's quite an achievement.
By tying those ancient fears, the vengeful soul, the power of emotion to very modern struggles with psychology, feeling alienated, trying to find acceptance. Beyond the Boundary really shows how powerful folklore still is for exploring who we are. The complex, sometimes monstrous landscape of being human makes you think, doesn't it? What kinds of Yōmu, what collective shadows might be lurking in our own subconscious, just waiting for us to notice them.